we've talked about this before. You remember a while back, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about a famous story about a little girl who was playing with matchsticks, pretending one was the witch and one was Hansel and one was Gretel, and suddenly ran to her father and was terrified and said, take the witch away, because her play, her imaginative play, had become real to her, and that this is what I feel is happening to our news media and to Democrats. They have peddled this idea that Donald Trump is a Russian spy and Donald Trump is a tyrant and Donald Trump is the most evil thing, the end of democracy, and now they believe it themselves. This is amazing. This is today's funniest two stories, right? Rich Noyes at Newsbusters, this site I love. I frequently bring in video from Newsbusters. I don't credit them enough, but they're part of the Media Research Center. Rich Noyes has this policy thing he does called Today in Media Bias History, where he goes back in time and tells you how media bias. This is from 2003 when the bombing of Baghdad started. And here's how the New York Times reported it, okay? To many New Yorkers, the scenes of Baghdad under siege were achingly familiar. New Yorkers watching the televised bombing of Baghdad yesterday said they were riveted by the raw and uninterrupted display of American military might. But for some, the bombing brought back particularly visceral and chilling memories. They could not help thinking about September 11th and how New York, too, was once under assault from the skies. So the bombing of Baghdad and the attack, completely attack on innocent people, murdering 3,000 Americans, were the same thing to the New York Times. That was a complete correlation. And this is the way they get themselves into this flurry. So today, let us visit the New York Times op-ed page, or as we like to call it, Knucklehead Row.
Oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, oh, let's go waltzing down to Knucklehead Row.
So Thomas Friedman, one of the chief knuckleheads on Knucklehead Row, just to show that they're still making these invidious comparisons, right? He has what Trump and Putin have in common, because everybody is so upset about Trump congratulating Putin on his victory. And I'm not sure I think that that's a great thing to do, but obviously Trump just thought that he's the great deal maker, he's the great communicator, he's going to work this out. So Thomas Friedman writes, first we heard how in 2003, the New York Times told us that the bombing of Baghdad was the same as 9/11. So now Thomas Friedman writes, he tells a story about a Bedouin chief, and somebody steals his turkey, and he cries to his sons, boys, help me find my turkey. And they say, well, what do you need a turkey for? But then people keep stealing things from him. And he says, once we let them steal the turkey, they knew they could take anything. And that was the problem. So Thomas Friedman says, I retell that story today because it's helpful in understanding how and why we failed to contain the egregious behavior of both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Okay, so Trump and Putin are very similar. They each started by, metaphorically speaking, stealing a turkey. And when we didn't respond, they kept ratcheting up their wretched behavior to the point where Trump thinks he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and Putin thinks he could poison a wayward spy in London and get away with it. Now, let's pause there for a minute. Trump made the joke that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. Putin poisoned a wayward spy in London, and it's not the first time he has poisoned and murdered people, okay? So now he talks about where they started. Trump's turkey was his tax returns. He knew that once he compromised the GOP into giving him a pass on his taxes, they'd roll over for anything, okay? So Trump's turkey, his first sin was not releasing his tax returns. What about Putin's turkey? It was the shooting down of the Malaysian civilian airliner, killing all 298 people on board. So Trump not relaxing his tax returns and Putin slaughtering 300 people, that's the same thing. I mean, this is the way these guys are thinking now. They're selling this narrative to themselves first, and then they come running to you and say, oh, daddy, daddy, take the witch away. I'm scared of the matchstick. I mean, that is what is happening to these guys.